Welcome back to Voices from the House of Zophiel. Today we've got Jessica Grote. Let me tell you something about Jessica. Hugely fascinating, actually, and something that I just feel very passionate about, and something that I keep coming across, which is expanding my knowledge of magical systems. But in this case, it's a particular pertinent aspect of this. And in terms of the podcast, it's something that we need to know about much more. So, who is Jessica? Jessica occupies a distinctive position within contemporary Western esotericism as one of the most articulate voices of the tradition that runs deliberately counter to the dominant currents of both orthodox religion and mainstream spirituality. She's a presiding bishop of Ecclesia Gnostica Aeterna. She represents a form of Gnosticism that challenges virtually everything most people assume about that term. So where conventional Gnostic traditions have historically sought liberation from matter and escape from a world conceived as a prison, Cosmic Gnosis pursues precisely the opposite trajectory. And by that, what I'm saying really is it's a path, but not of transcendence, but of descent. And that could be described as a chthonic, pandaemonic current that celebrates the ensouled depths of an embodied an existence rather than fleeing them. And central to this vision is a crucial distinction between soul and spirit. The latter understood as a force that has subjugated the sacred world of cyclical becoming, imposing the dictatorship of the rational and quantifiable, and producing a desouled world experienced as imprisonment. And saying this, the soul, by contrast, belongs to the realm of cyclical return, the living flow of telluric life of this planet, celebrated in ancient cults of the Great Mother. And to finish off, Jessica's path into this tradition was shaped both by academic rigor, I would say, but also initiatory practice. She holds an MA in religious studies from the University of Heidelberg, but she regards 2 decades of this initiatory work as more formative in that kind of influence. She co-owns Theon Publishing. She's dedicated to making essential occult texts accessible to sincere seekers, and has spoken at various esoteric conferences, including more recently Occulture Conference. I think that was in Berlin. I didn't actually get there, but I've heard lots of good things about it. So today I'm going to welcome you, Jessica, and thank you very much for joining me in this podcast.
Thank you for having me here. Looking forward to our chat.
That's good. And I'm just going to explore Cosmic Gnosis with you. Okay. And whatever happens is the right answer. And we're just gonna talk about these ideas. Okay. Very rich ideas, actually. But they're full of things that cause a lot of reflection, I would say. And perhaps a reordering of what we believe things may be. So I find it hugely refreshing. And I hope our listeners after this podcast will dive into understanding much more about this and do their own research. So as a dive into some of these questions, I just want to point towards your academic training at Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, for myself, academia is one of the things that I did for quite a long time. It has its great, its uses, and certainly sometimes it gets in the way of things.
Totally.
Entirely. But it does give you scholarly tools. It gives you a way of researching things and finding out things. And I think that's one of the most useful things I would say. But in your case, it's tools for understanding religion, um, perhaps spirituality, and you do describe as your initiation into cosmic gnosis as being more important than the formal education. Can you expand on that for us?
Oh, sure. As you just pointed out yourself, I think the academic education has, of course, a lot of useful uses and is helpful to our way of learning to research, learning to read things, and especially I think also to discuss and see different opinions. I think that's one of the most important things for me also in religious studies. It was part of that was to see the wide range of religious thought that actually exists in the world. And I'm hugely thankful for having been able to have this education. But at the same time, academic education only brings you so far in regards to spirituality, occultism, and so on, because you need, of course, practice. And in regards to gnosis, that is a totally different way of knowledge, right? It's not like academia brings you research, book knowledge, so to say, and that's helpful for professional lives. That's helpful for communication, and that's also the good use, I think, in regards to the occult, for example, that it enables us to talk about it,
Mm,
especially when we come from different directions.
right.
But of course, the initiation and the experiences around that, those are life-changing things in the end. I mean, for me, my Gnostic path and my magical work is something that is my way of life. It's not just
Yeah.
a hobby or something, it's
Yeah.
about transforming actually the whole personality, so to say, to find a different way of interacting with the world and with people.
I'm not, yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, certainly for us uh, back here, that our practice, I mean, right, we read a lot. We read a lot. However, that doesn't mean anything happens. And I think that once you're, it's like that knowledge wisdom thing, isn't it?
Mm,
You may have a lot of knowledge because you've acquired it, and yet unless you do something, it doesn't touch wisdom in some sense. And
exactly.
once you're a practitioner, other things happen, and there's a kind of different understanding, a different rhythm to certain things. And I think that is what how it becomes part of your life. You know, how it becomes ingrained, how it becomes part of your daily structure. So saying some of this, if you look at that distinction between soul and spirit, I think it stands at the heart of cosmic gnosis because, people use these terms interchangeably. I mean, can you give some color to that of how you understand this crucial difference between soul and spirit?
Yeah, I think that's one of the, of course, most important topics. At the same time, also always has a little bit of difficulty around it, not to get into too technical terms or make it too abstract. And so on the one hand, first, I'd like to say that as far as I'm aware, I think it's a lot of a problem with interchanging the terms comes from early psychology, actually, I think, because at that point you get into soul equates mind, and that's more or less the same standing we have today. I think even soul is hardly used anymore in contemporary culture, except for wellness or these kind of things. So it becomes already a kind of weak term,
Yeah,
which shows the whole
actually,
thing.
yeah, that is a good point. I mean, certainly, um, when I did a lot of my research and studies, a lot of it came from an understanding of transpersonal psychology, which I kind of love all that stuff.
Mm.
And soul is mentioned a lot in there and those terms, but certainly in psychology, people kind of look awkwardly towards that because the spooky end of psychology is like, oh no, they're kind of weird. You can't
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
quantify that. So what are we doing here? But
exactly.
but it still
And there
exists.
you already have the spirit approach, so to say.
Mm.
As I think make it a bit more into a very simple example, I think you could see this crucial
Yeah,
distinguishment between soul and spirit as the one of head and heart in some way. Because if you think about a person who has hardly any emotion and is very, very brain centered, that would be like a robot or a psychopath.
yeah.
So, basically a person that is no longer really connected to the rest of humanity nor to the world. And I think that is basically what we're trying to express here, that we have a kind of a status today that people are very much separated from the world, from other beings, and that you have lost the connection and the resonance with the cosmos, so to say. That's where the cosmic part of Cosmic Gnosis comes
Yeah.
in. So in the end, it's basically this kind of distinction that you can express in different terms, and I think that's the easiest now to just leave it at that.
So yeah, I think we can leave it as that. I mean, it does give some color to what we're pointing at there. But also there's something about the current of cosmic gnosis, and as it how it emerges, and this term, the nocturnal consciousness of human experience, which opposes most orthodox forms. Um, I mean, can you tell us more about this kind of counter tradition, and how does it relate to things like the left-hand path and chthonic currents in Western esotericism? What's your take on that?
Sure. I mean, of course, the first essential connection between them is that all of those are magical currents and magical systems. The tendency of the left-hand path to focus on more of a deification of the self, that's a bit where I already get a little bit of a problem, because I think, yes, it's important, but at the same time, you have to first break down the self that you build up in modern day living. Since I think we have actually a kind of personality that we project outside, that we have due to cultural influences, society, and so on. And I think it's not done with just saying, okay, and now I have a how do you want to say, a divine core, like also classic Gnosticism would say, of course. And now I want to, put this on top of everything. I think that's just the same way that the most of culture is going right now, that you're just focusing so much on improvement and self development in the way to put yourself above everything else, that you lose sight again of this connection that I mentioned earlier in the world around
Mm,
you.
mm,
And there the chthonic comes in, of course, which has a way more earth-centered and thus also cyclical centered
yeah,
um, direction and focus. So eventually, cosmic gnosis has overlap with these traditions, but it's always on some level superfluous, because it's terms and terminology and aspects that are connected and related, just as we have aspects that connect us to Gnosticism. But the result, or the depth and foundation, and what we aim for, that's different. And
yeah.
I think that's especially because of the different connotation on what we want to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned, I mean, you just mentioned there this cyclical nature of things, the Great Mother and the world, the Earth we're on, um, and it's kind of like this, this return to things rather than a linear progression. I mean, I think we're understanding that things are not linear these days anyway, not really. It's an illusion of that, and it's not really that, and it's function unless it depends how we get hold of that, but. What I what I want to point us towards really is that if we have this kind of cyclical return, what does this, I mean, what does this mean for practitioners and their experience of daily life, death, and meaning? I mean, does it impact on
Yeah,
those?
that's Absolutely, it's crucial, I think. At the same time, it's as usual not as easy as said, right? I think, yes, we have understood way more, at least in our circles, that linear is not the way to go. But at the same time, I think we are still embedded in mainstream culture, and that's very linear. As I said before, with all the progression focus and you're always running after goals and goals and goals, and to achieve something, you do not even know what at one point, and still feel not content, and something is missing. And I think that we all kind of understand this feeling, and we are still in this linear way of living with just some shadows of cyclical. For example, in cultural traditions, you usually have some customs like our holidays and celebrations. They are always connected to the seasons and these kind of matters. So you have there some remnants, but to actually get into an understanding of the cyclical, I think that requires quite a bit more, which is something that we would support then with the ritual work and initiation.
Yeah,
Of course, and I think in the end, what this does for you, to come back to that question, is that you get a different perspective on life and that you get a different understanding of also death as a part of life and not, follow this fear of death, which is actually a drive for this linear progression, I think, where it's like, it feels a bit like running away from or towards something that is not really you cannot really grasp it. I think it's really caused by fearing death and so trying to reach something that lets you overcome this, as even Christianity would put it. So I think if we are able to return into this more cyclical understanding of life and feeling and experiencing of this, especially also, then we also find a way of being more content in our life as it is, and to
right.
be more, again, connected to the world and to also, especially then the dead, the spirits, and all these things.
I'm not, I do, I really like how you've talked about this linear progression in terms of living life and the goals we keep pursuing, which leave us feeling there's something missing. I do know from another kind of world that I operate in that where people comes from the world of things like therapy and coaching and things like this, which I find are very clumsy, even though I'm trying to do both and this, that, and the other. They are things that unfortunately cause problems more than helping people find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the best way of putting it, but
I think, yeah. I mean, I see the same thing
yeah,
in self-improvement, for example,
right,
which is
right.
totally
And
on vogue.
And when you go a goal, what I realized, well, I came from something that I experienced. So when I work, because I work in lots of different countries, right? And when I work in those kind of fields in different places, if I work in somewhere that's Western orientated and we start to talk about goals and solutions, right? That's what people are manipulated and patterned in thinking. And therefore, what it's really about is a competition of the self, which is highly inappropriate for other
Yeah,
places
yeah,
I work
yeah,
where those Western ideas are offensive because
yeah,
competition is offensive.
yeah.
So there are different cycles, as you are saying, that are much more conducive to our living patterns rather than our uh, conditioning.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that,
Absolutely.
yeah? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, as I just said, I think this whole focus on our improving ourselves is also very much a part of that. Instead of finding satisfaction in and contentness in what we are.
Yeah. I mean, you do talk about, I just want to touch about things like practice, initiation, and ritual. And I think that I think you're suggesting that, these things reunite an isolated human life. Um, can you touch on that a little bit more for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. As I said, I'm absolutely convinced that we need, let's say, outer help in a way to break down actually this self that we build up.
Hmm.
And this comes in form of, on the one hand, a teacher and the community, and initiation on the other, which is extremely important in our current. We would not do something like, okay, now you go study this and then you can do it. It's not about just reading the book, doing the practice, and now you become enlightened or whatever one wants to call it. You can do this up to a certain point, and that's
Yeah.
totally good to do.
Mm.
But then you would need something and someone to actually change, to actually bring the magic in, so to say, to change you also on a metaphysical level, if that is what you want to achieve. I mean, coming from the perspective I already laid out, that's something I want to do, to actually change the way I am living my life
Mm.
and interacting with the world and other beings. And there, I think, to actually do successfully magic, you need initiation into this current.
Right. I mean, you mentioned pandemonium, right? Or the concept of pandemonium. And taking this taking this path we're talking about, um, you do I think you do talk about cosmic gnosis carrying opportunities to celebrate multiplicity and the intensity of daemonic powers rather than fearing and rejecting them. Um, and how did you come to this understanding of this idea of pandemonium?
Um, on First, of course, it's the distinction between daemon and demon.
Right, of course.
Right. So, of course, if you are talking about demons in the way that Christianity put it up, or you have this fearful, hellish beings, then that's of course something different. If you understand daemon though as a spirit, as a power, as a force, as a kind of yeah, something that and live in something else. So, like for example, you have a daemon of a tree or a mountain or a lake, then you would have a very different understanding of that. I mean, of course, you can go into some kind of ethical view from a human perspective always, but I would not do that. I try to see those entities as neutral first of all, and then having, of course, their own way of enthusing you. And I think to say pandemonium in our way just means basically that everything alive, everything that is there in a kind of body in the widest way you can
Uh,
understand that,
yeah,
has a soul, has a daemon. So
yeah,
everything that is alive is demonic
yeah,
in a certain way and can interact with each other. And that pandemonium, I think, on the same is also then a distinction from the normal understanding of animism in the way that a
right,
lot of people say everything has a soul. Yeah, but then it becomes very often very um yeah, I don't the concept becomes muddy in a way that there is this understanding, yeah, okay, everything has kind of a soul, but what does this mean? Is it not in the end still the divine expressing itself in everything else? And then you have the idea again, which is quite monotheistic actually, that you have God um, within everything, and that's like basically just a one. So in terms of the daemons, as you pointed out, the multiplicity, that's the important, essential part, that we do not feel that animism, for example, is the same as the immanence of the divine in everything, that there's one source, but that you have a unique expression of everything, that you have daemons in a multiplicity. And that's why it's a pandemonium.
right. I think that's pretty clear for everybody. Well, I hope it's pretty clear. I do
I
like this
hope so too.
idea. we're working with the multiplicity of daemons rather than it becomes a homogenized and it does become a bit muddy. And
Yeah.
it takes the power out of it if we try and just build it all up as one thing. You know, it is good to think about things operating in different ways. And I was just thinking about studying things and studying cosmic gnosis and approaches to that. And what's your view on working with cosmic gnosis in solitary study as against working with someone else or others in this practice?
Yeah, I think I already said that before or touched upon it,
Mm.
that it only is possible to a certain degree. And it will be more possible now because Theon is currently having on pre-order David's new book, which is The Black Pilgrimage. And that is actually the first and most important essential exposition of Cosmic Gnosis. Has a huge practical part too, so people can start working with this in a solitary manner. But eventually, because of the transformation that we're seeking, because of this the way that we understand magic to work, and that the requirement even of demonic entities and souls and other beings and the cosmos as a living pandemonium, you need to get this connection. I think you cannot get that on your own because you
Right.
need somebody to help you actually break down the border, so to say, that the spirit or build up that culture in some way, even build up so that you need initiation to get a connection, be
Right.
connected to those transmission to these powers
Yeah.
that enable you to do this. You need a teacher, in my understanding, to be able to pinpoint your blind spots, the things you do not want to see, and to help you actually also transform in this way and not just in your comfort zone. And you also need community. I think you need other people. You can do ritual for yourself, and we all do this in some part because we are also spread all over the world, and so everybody is in their own place of living. And
Mm.
at the same time, though, we try to connect very regularly, also in person,
Right.
to then do work together. And that's a huge difference, I think. It also, because that also informs then your solitary practice, because you take it with you, the experiences you had in a group.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think these days it is important to meet others
Mm. Even
physically.
more so now.
If
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely that. I mean, what pandemics have done and things like this, and governments and
Yeah,
interference in our life that
absolutely.
creates other tensions for us. We kind of lose something about our connectivity, and I think it's important to rekindle all those things at best. Um,
Absolutely.
our
I
own-
think especially also with this high rise of loneliness between in younger people and the difficulty to connect and not really knowing how to actually connect because you're basically sitting in front of a computer all day. It makes it very difficult. And yeah, people lose this, and it's important to build it up again. I think it becomes even more important now, also with the rise of AI and everything. So yeah,
that as well. I mean, certainly, I do understand that AI has its uses
yeah,
and
yeah,
can be
yeah,
very useful, and yet on the other hand, it's really badly used, and it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
used intelligently. We're not using it for what it can do for us. We're kind of looking at it towards something that has the answer, and it doesn't.
yeah, yeah.
It's a process thing. It's not. Anyway, don't let me go on about that. But I think that yeah, it causes all sorts of
Detour
problems.
topic, I
I
know.
get very angry about it, and I understand why. But I think we have to
Mm,
understand it better and use it better rather than being a Luddite and just work with the best aspects of what we can have and throw the rest away. And I think we need to do that now. It's not going to go away. Um,
no.
no. Can
But
I?
it also shows exactly the problem because you can see how many people engage now with that because they do not have a connection to other humans.
No.
So it's
No,
a
I mean,
replacement.
right. I mean, I was trying to sort out something this week, and I was online and I was looking for some help with something, and he said, "Do you want to speak to a human?" This, but and it's like, yeah, actually, I really do, and it's done in such a way now. It's like, okay, let's connect you with a human. I mean, how super scary is this, right? So I'm like, okay, fair enough. But anyway, let me just drag us back to this these ideas. But can I ask you about as a presiding bishop, right? It does indicate that you hold a kind of a position in office, ecclesiastical office, and therefore it has a structure, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, again, in the tradition of things we're talking about, cosmic gnosis, isn't there a tension between institutional authority and spiritual religion? I mean, what have you got to say about that one? Is that a horrible question?
Like it because I can understand that, especially since a lot of people in the occult always have a problem with the ecclesiastical side of things. So I can relate to that. But at the same time, I think the heretical, antinomian, transgressive
Yes,
part
that one.
is already present in me, first of all, because I'm a woman.
Yeah,
And classically, the apostolic succession is not for women. Catholic Christianity is not for women as a priest, as a
yeah,
celebrant of the Mass,
yeah,
or as a bishop. So that's already kind of still keeping in line with the heretic aspect. But then also the institutional aspect of that is very much on the surface. And
yeah,
the language, of course, is also related to church, to Christianity, to classic Gnosticism. But that's at the same time because we also use it kind of like you use the power of the enemy against the enemy, right? So it's turning it over, and if somebody starts studying with me or other members of the EGA, then they will see after some time that it's a very different matter, that there's cosmic gnosis at the heart of that, and
yeah.
that's of course not ecclesiastical in the classic sense, and the institutional hierarchy is also not as strict. It's more about phases and stages of that transformative alchemical path, so to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on this in a way, but can I ask you about Avatera simultaneously be sacred and transgressive? I mean, what I'm trying to say is that there's something about approach to incarnate existence and the body. I mean, you do talk about in one of your lectures about this. Can you just share that with everybody listening? Because I think it's really important, just leading from the last thing you said.
Sure, sure. Yeah, hetera is a concept. I mean, that's been the ancient Greek, Greece. It's been the courtesans.
Yeah,
So, and it's for me, it's also more of finding this very feminine role, also the female role in the cosmic gnosis. So it's a different approach from the institutional sacramental Gnosticism. For example, it's more focused on body, it's more focused on sexual energy, sensuality also. And at the same time, since hetera have been women who have been also intellectually educated and also, so very much into the arts. So I think it's more pointing towards what cosmic gnosis goes towards too, like this combination of soul and also your mental abilities in some kind of harmony and symbiosis in your life. And I think especially also for women still today it's important to work work with the body and get a different connection to that, because especially now where we have this rise of plastic surgery and people almost all want to look the same, so
Yeah.
it's very very important, I think, to actually even become get in touch again with your body, with your sensuality, and also sexuality in this connection. So sacred is not really the word I would see here, because
Yeah.
yes, I often talk then in this relation also about sacred sexuality, but more because that's the touches upon what other people call this, and
Okay. Yeah.
it it's kind of distinguishes it, of course, from simply um, instinctive drive or something, so gives it a bit more of a certain range. And but I like especially about the Hetera concept that it's not sacred in that way, that it's way more normal living, and it's way more about this instead of turning yourself into, I don't know, some goddess priestess or a sacred prostitute or any of those roles that I think are much more than there to make you feel special again about your life, you
Yeah.
know?
I think it's really important to talk for everybody to talk about these things because you're right in saying that how has it become that a lot of women want to present themselves as this kind of uniform mask, this persona, this constructed persona of something. I mean, it's been quite quick in its realization, and yet, in some way, sometimes I think about, so does this mask? I think I'm just doing this really badly, but does this mask provide you with something you can hide behind? I mean, I've worked quite a lot in different countries where they wear veils, etc., because of the law of the place, etc., and Afghanistan and places like this. And yet, I do know that sometimes wearing a burqa or something like that gives a certain amount of freedom because nobody knows you are there. It's a
Sure.
bit like this. And on the other hand, it's a restraint on your individuality and difference. And
Yeah.
there's a tension between the two. And this is not about men, it's about women and where we're at, you know?
Yeah.
The-
Although, interestingly enough, I think that in the West, it's becoming more and more thing for men too. If we look at younger men today, they are also extremely focused on their appearance, and in way more than they have been, I think.
right.
In this physical way, building muscle early on and become kind of in a certain shape that everybody else on the internet is. So yeah, it's difficult. I'm not sure whether it's kind of, yeah, it may be that, as you said, it's kind of hiding also behind a kind of identity that you share with everybody. So you do no longer fall out of the frame. You're no longer something that can take too much attention, although that kind of is.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, this is a huge theme, I think, because for a long time, there's been some understanding of stages of being a woman, but therefore it turns into classification and things like this. But there are parts of our lives, I mean, this has gone a long time in psychology and things like this, but what are the stages of womanhood? And this it's been politicized and there's all sorts of stuff about that, okay? Um, and I kind of understand those kind of things. I mean, even if that kind of starts to move into, well, things like Hecate and very popular at the moment, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
these three stages of that and etc. etc. Right? But then when we talk about men, there are only, to my knowledge, a few books on stages of being a man. And I do have one book I kind of like on that because I don't like categorization as such. It's just useful to place things. but it's not meant to be fixed because it's moved and it keeps moving. But there is this guy called Chenin who wrote The Stages of Being a Man, and that's super interesting because he wrote about, from teenage boy into early man, you're taught to be the hero,
Mm,
whether you like it or not.
mm.
So there's that kind of conditioning, and then that moves towards the patriarch because you become the emperor, the king, the tarot,
Yeah, yeah,
things like this, which has certain qualities that you emulate, but it's still societal conditioning. But you learn to become like that until I'm talking about myself now, that's moving away from that at my age into the next stage. And what is that?
yeah,
So you stop proving yourself and holding on to your realm towards liberating the self away from that when you look back in it and think, well, that was a shit waste of time, wasn't it? Because I didn't learn much from that, but it was damned hard and it was stressful. So you learn
yeah,
to laugh at yourself and you become the trickster
yeah,
image.
yeah, yeah.
And it was a really interesting book in that respect. Certainly, and it's not written as a magical book. It's about sociology, really. But I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see
yeah.
a lot of magical issues within that. I mean, what
Of
do we
course,
become?
absolutely.
What
Yeah.
do we become? Where are we at right now? And if we mask where we're at, I don't know, what does it do? You know, maybe I've just gone
Even
completely
even
off track.
to actually occupy yourself with that question, to because I think a lot of people are just kind of even unconsciously following the rules, so to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
And to even question yourself of where am I at? What is the mask I'm wearing? Am I wearing a mask? And so on. I think that's important and essential questions to ask in
Yeah,
every
yeah.
area. So
I
that's also part of or should be part of magic, I think.
I think so, and because it happens incrementally, I think.
Mm.
So by the media, by you pick up these messages and you start to become them. I think it is magical. It is a state of, have I become this?
Yeah.
What's happened here? Do I need to dissolve this and find my next path on where I'm going and stuff? Deep questions. Have we gone off path? No. I mean, it's still to do with
I
no.
think it's still all a part of it.
It's still all a part of it. Well, I'm just conscious of the time for our podcast, but I just would like to mention Theon Publishing, um, just to bring all that to that kind of work you do. And from my perspective, I think that Theon, what it does is it manifests occult writing. It kind of brings it to us, but not as you don't just simply publish them. You bring something with that. I mean, can you define that for people?
Yeah, I think it's because we, of course, only do a limited amount of titles per year. We do not like publish that many books. I mean, um, so we because we actually put a lot of work into each title to bring out the essence, the soul of it, so to say. So it's again this understanding of body soul interconnection. So you try to find the right body for this soul that the text has,
Yeah,
and this starts with the editorial. I think we are one of the few niche publishers who really puts a lot into editorial. David does a fantastic job there,
yeah,
and like exchanges also with authors and give it back to them with suggestions and recommendations and partly rewrites so it becomes what it should be. Like it really expresses itself, and that's then what I try then also to turn into the book with the design questions, material, and
yeah,
these kind of things, so that you have
yeah,
in the end something that is haptic, physical, sensual, and expresses itself. And hopefully, it can also then enthuse the reader in one way or the other. like I
Right.
think important books should do at one point.
Right. And therefore they become part of the living magical tradition of what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
Oh,
I would not say that each and every book can do this for each and every body. Of course not. You will have books that speak to you, and you will have books that do nothing for you, of course, as everything else in life.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, I love to collect books and buy books, and I like them around me, whether they're half finished or completely finished,
Yeah,
or I
me
keep
too.
looking at them thinking I need to get on with that and read it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I know that.
now that kind of, I think the Japanese have a funny, there's a lovely expression for it, but I can't recall it right now. Where you surround yourself with books you need to read. But
Me too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard about that. Yeah,
yeah, I can't remember now. But I must, it must be a very fascinating world as part of that, and certainly it does touch on what your own practice is. Now, I'm thinking about our listeners there about whether we've touched everything we need to talk about today in terms of, gnosis, cosmic gnosis. I think we've,
one can talk quite a lot about this,
yeah,
of course. I think we scratched on some important things, and
yeah.
yeah.
I think we might
As
do
said,
another one.
everybody who's interested should check out our websites, Theon Publishing, especially with the new book by David.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
that's very important.
I'll put the link on the front end of the podcast to Thern website. Okay, and make sure that happens. There's a fuller explanation, introduction to yourself will be on the front as well. Um, yeah, I think there's more to talk about, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But for today, it's been lovely.
Today, I think that's all we can cover. And
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Will I see you at Pandemonium this time?
actually, I will give a presentation. I have a talk there
Right, right.
about the sexual body. So it will be touching upon the points that we
Great.
talked about.
Okay, that's brilliant. Right. Well, this goes out before that, so I'm just encouraging people
Exactly.
come back,
Get there, get your
get
tickets,
there, be
and
there, turn up. I mean, last year's was a hell of a lot of fun,
yeah,
and this is going to be the same. So it's just a lovely gathering, and it's
absolutely.
stimulating, makes you think,
Yeah,
and it's active, and it's people talk to each other, and it's a good way of networking, communicating. So fully
absolutely.
support that. But for now, Jessica, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been super. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
you
Thank
go
you.
well.
Enjoyed
So
it.
David at some point, and I'll see you soon.
You too.
Okay, so bye for now.